Hi guys, we've just come to Smith Motorcycles to fetch our MV Agusta F4 Corse. We had new tires fitted to her and now we're going to quickly trailer her back, and when we're back at the garage we're going to do a review on this bike as well as give you a short history about MV Agusta, the company, the factory and the men behind it. Got her back into our garage, safe and sound where she belongs. So let's have a look at the history of the company MV Agusta, as well as review this F4 Corse and why she is so special. MV stands for Meccanica Vergera. Agusta is the surname of the family. The story starts a little bit before then though, with the father, Count Giovanni Agusta, who at the turn of the century had a passion for flying. And 4 years after the Wright brothers' first flight in the US, Count Giovanni had completed his first aeroplane. Unfortunately, he passed away at a very early age, and in 1927 left his life's work to his wife Giuseppina and their 4 sons. One of the sons, Count Domenico Agusta, realized during wartime already that should peace return, an alternative form of transport would be required. So he started dabbling in motor scooters, and by 1943 had developed and produced his first prototype 98cc scooter. His vision paid off because with the peace treaty at the end of World War II, where Italy was banned from building anything aircraft related, then on the 19th of January 1945, Count Domenico Agusta founded the company MV Agusta, Meccanica Vergera Agusta. And with that, he took all his helicopter engineers and artisans with their skills and their precision and swung them into developing and putting all those skills into motorcycles. And as you will see, very soon that paid off and the brand became hugely successful in racing. I'm sure you can appreciate Count Domenico's exceptional leadership abilities, because after World War II, it was difficult to find a job and not to lose your job. And by him redirecting his entire company from the aviation industry to motorcycle industry, he saved his whole workforce. So, having founded the company in January of 45, by October 6th of 46, they had their first race win. Barely 23 months into the company's history, they won first, second and third place at their home racetrack in Monza. It shows clearly that applying helicopter engineers into the motorcycle industry was a huge success, and this success continued all the way through to 1976. However, going a little bit back in the history, by 1952 the brand was allowed to build helicopters again and under license built for companies such as Bell, Boeing and a few other big names. And in 1971, sadly, Count Domenico passed away, and with it the leading light and guiding force of the brand. And 1976 was the point where they needed a financial partner to survive. Found a partner that same year, however, sadly that partner forced them to exit the motorcycle industry. An appropriate 1976 was their last Grand Prix victory on motorcycles. But through their 31 years of motorcycle building and racing motorcycles, they amassed a total of 270 Grand Prix victories, 38 World Rider titles, 37 constructor titles, and they had some big names and legends race for them, such as Giacomo Agostini, Phil Reed, Mike Hailwood, Ubaldi, and the famous John Surtees, who after his multiple two-wheel titles on MV Agusta went on to win the four-wheel title in Formula One for Ferrari. With the closing of the motorcycle division in 1976 and the last MV being sold in 1978, begins the third chapter in this awesome brand's history, and it starts with a family by the name of Castelloni. Going a little bit back, in 1960, the father again, Giovanni Castelloni, founded a company that produced loops and clasps in metal for suitcases, as well as metal rivets on jeans. Can you believe these little things saved this phenomenal brand? Now, his two sons, Gianfranco and Claudio, joined the father's company, and they were very enthusiastic motorcyclists. And when they heard the MV was closing that division, they tried to acquire it. At first they couldn't, so they acquired the Harley-Davidson European division known as Emaki. They soon renamed it to Cagiva. And finally in 1992, they acquired the MV Agusta motorcycle brand name, and by that stage they owned the Cagiva, Ducati, Montemorini, MV Agusta, as well as Husqvarna brands. So the most famous designer at that point in time working for Cagiva was Massimo Tamburini, and he was busy completing the iconic Ducati 916, completed in 93, launched in 1994. After he completed that iconic bike, which ended up in the Guggenheim Museum of Art, so then Massimo Tamburini was tasked to design and develop the machine that would be the rebirth of the brand. So in 1997, Claudio Castelloni as well as Tamburini introduced to the public at the Milan Motor Fair the prototype of the MV Agusta F4. And finally in 1998, the world launch of the MV Agusta F4 Sierra Oro Series Gold 750cc, and the brand's third chapter began. MV as a brand has always been very bold in their designs and pushing the envelopes. Some example of that are in 1965, they introduced and launched the first four-cylinder transverse motorcycle. Then in the 70s, when all the designs were smooth and rounded off, they launched and introduced into the market the 350S Hypothesis, which was a very straight-lined, angular design. And even if you look at the side cover on that bike, has got the fins in to replicate the air cooling fins of the air-cooled motor. And even in this F4, the beauty and the boundaries are not just skin deep. Looking at the motor, that motor actually started its life as a Formula One engine for Ferrari. 1990 to 1992 is what this engine is based on. And at the beginning, even the Ferrari engineers were involved in the design, taking the V8 Formula One engine, cutting it in half and having a four-cylinder. What it has, what makes it unique, is that it is one of the few production bikes to have a motor with a hemispherical combustion chamber. What that means, the Americans call it a Hemi motor, Hemi V8s. The combustion chamber has a dome in it, the piston has a dome in it, which allows for radial valves. Radial valves also comes directly from Formula One technology. Ferrari have used it since the 30s. On the domed combustion chamber, the valves lean out slightly, which allows you on the bigger curvature to give you bigger valves. Those larger valves allow for better fluid dynamics, fewer dead spots in the combustion chamber, higher compression ratio, and basically a much more powerful motor. So a hemispherical combustion chamber, domed pistons, radial valves, just to name a few, and based on a 90 to 1992 Ferrari F1 engine. That's just the internals. Now let's look at the skin around this phenomenal motor. And just like in the 70s, a bike I mentioned earlier, the 350S Ipotesi that was launched, it was a trendsetter. All the bikes back in the day were very rounded and smooth edges in the design, and the Ipotesi came out very bold, square and angular lines, which set trends for 15 years going forward. Now, one of the most dominant features on this bike are these 4 tailpipes coming out the back. And that design feature carried on for 20 years. First bike being launched F4 in 1998 and the final edition made in 2018 with the 4 tailpipes just in square. So that design feature, timeless, 20 years. And MV Agusta quite frequently makes limited editions and specials, sometimes signifying something or introducing a new model. Just like when they introduced the first F4, it was the Sierra Oro, Italian for Series Gold. It was introduced in a limited edition number of 300 units. And then later, when they beefed up that motor to 1000 cc, it was introduced into the market in a limited edition 300 units as a Ago, short for Agostini. Now, 2 years later, in 2007, they asked the designer Massimo Tamburini to come up with a special edition which he felt should hark back to the racing days. Now, if you look at the overall design, it has the traditional top in red, bottom in silver, with the blue Agusta name in it. You will also see, giving honor to the 37 constructor titles in it, over here put the big logo in, and the original race bikes having red leather seats. This bike also has genuine leather, red seat over here, with the silver pinstriping matching up with the pinstriping in the paintwork, white leather on top. This being a monoposto bike, single-seater, has a red leather bump stop. This being the F4 Corse, Italian word Corsa meaning race. These bikes were made 300 units only, limited edition. Each one came with a little plaque on top giving the number and the country it was sent to. This bike being 002/ZA, ZA being South Africa where this bike was sent to. You will see the Rev Counter shows a monstrous 17,000 RPM, has to do with the special F1 technology, radial valve motor, etc., etc., as covered. You have a Öhlins steering damper up front, and let's look at some other feature. Monstrous Marzocchi front shocks. The front brakes are 6-piston calipers, not like the traditional 4-piston calipers. And at the bottom for the axle, you have the quick release, nicely machined. You have Marzocchi light forged wheels, front and rear, in the racing Y-spoke design. Over here I have the traditional Brembo wheel that the F4 comes in. It's made by Brembo in a 5-star design. This being the Corsa, the race bike, it has to have the Mocassini race wheels, lights forged in the Y-spoke design. It also has the carbon rear hugger. Also standard to this Corsa edition are the performance pipes at the rear, made by Arrows for MV. It also has the tail tidy with the integrated indicators in white lenses. Also has white indicator lenses up front. And overall, just a beautiful, special, limited piece. What we'll do now is we will pick her up and put her back where she belongs, so we store her nicely away. So we've got more space in our workshop to work. And we'll put her right next to the other MV Agusta, the F3 Ago, which we will review in a later episode. And she's standing right next to a Benelli Tornado LE limited edition. Over here we have another Tesi to look at, a Ducati Paul Smart, which is signed. Next to it, the Ducati Senna 1. At the bottom, we have the 5 homologation World Championship winners from a 888 SP4 to a 1098R. And this side, we have some bikes we've reviewed already, BMW HP2 and HP4. Under the platform, we have some Aprilias to look at, the RS125, the Miles, the Rs. On top, we have some more Yamaha R1s, the SP, LE, and the 50W GPs to look at. And in the room next door, we have another 6 or 7 bikes. 2 of them we've reviewed already, being the Yamaha R1s, Kenny Robert colors, limited edition 50th and 60th anniversary, and in the shed at the back, I think 2 more bikes. So as you can see, quite a bit of material and nice machines to review. And if you've liked what you've seen and enjoyed the little bit of a tour of the MV history, please remember to click like and subscribe and follow us on Route 21 Garage.